It's a thing for sure.
Yeah.
Chris, welcome back. It's season 5, episode 33. You and I have been
Dun,
out of
dun,
commission for a
dun,
couple of
dun,
weeks.
dun.
Can,
No, not out of commission, right?
what do you want to
We're
call
just
it? Busy? Busy? We've been busy?
so as in we were non-potting,
Non-potting, yeah.
non-potting. Okay, we were not. We were not. What do we call this? Dude, no.
Oh, tubing? Pod tubing?
Pod. No, not. Yeah, pod tubers. Yeah, something like
Pod
that.
tubers.
Yeah.
Um, I wanna say today's a special day, Chris.
Okay.
It's our 209th episode. Happy
Nice.
209, Chris.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you. Happy 209. Look how far we've come.
What a journey, eh?
We've come so far in podcasting that we don't even care about podcasting anymore. We can
No.
take what is it, 4 weeks off, 4 weeks off, whatever it was. I will say, um, when I'm not podcasting, I live a full life. I live a very full life. So, um, the whole us not being here for a few weeks, purposeful, right? Purposeful. You agree?
Sure.
So just to that end, because we're, kind of on the inside of this and we're constantly connecting and chatting and just reflecting throughout the week on a bunch of stuff. Folks, we're still, whoever's listening out there, we're still doing our homework. We actually talk um constantly and critically and creatively. We're out there doing the work, figuring out. If we're not here, it's going into our work and our families. That's just the truth. But where I was going with this, beyond complimenting you and I so much, and I shared this with you. I was delightfully surprised, and who knows, maybe my colleagues out there right now. I didn't get permission to mention their name, but I did have a colleague, kind of busted into my classroom one day, and I always love these sort of like the blurt factor, right? Just comes in. I don't think there was a salutation. It was just like, "What's going on? Where's the podcast?" And I'm kind of like shifting from creating a rubric into, "Hey, colleague, how's it?" And it's like, "Oh, yeah, oh," and then all of a sudden I get, just a little bit like I get sort of a little bit of joy off that, and then a little bit of like, just a little bit of embarrassment because it's funny. We do the podcast, we have this conversation. People jump on socials sometimes. Sometimes people are in the YouTube feed and saying stuff. But the face to face thing is like, oh, you, because right away my brain is not taking. I kind of shift from like, what's going on to, oh yeah, the podcast, to, you listen to our podcast. And I was like, that's so awesome, thank you for listening to the podcast. I'm like, well, yeah, and then I go into the spiel. I'm like, a big part of us being able to do the podcast as consistently as we have, and we felt up a pretty, I would say it's a rigorous schedule. I feel it from the inside, but part of that is also acknowledging that, this whole project was very much we have other things going on besides podcasting. We have to have other things going on. This is just sort of one of the spaces that we do our thing. So, yeah, I like that though. But if my colleague is out there listening, I'm going to wish you a happy good morning, and maybe they're in the YouTube feed and they'll give permission to sort of mention their name. I'll say, this colleague's pretty cool. This colleague has helped me a lot with programming and conversations and resources. A lot of my colleagues have, they're the school that I'm at, very, very helpful. But yeah, it was just taking time off. It's nice to be, I'll say, missed. Like, it's a little bit like, a little missed. Like, where's the stuff? And the mention was that they really appreciated our conversation about lawns.
Hmm.
So, and it's funny because like I don't have the analytics. So I know we talked about gardening and lawns at some point, but I don't specifically remember a memorable moment in us talking about lawn care. Do you remember? That was, I mean, it feels like so long ago, but do you remember anything in particular that we were talking about lawns?
In particular, no, but that we
Okay.
were talking about lawns.
Yeah.
Or
I know we did. I just I couldn't lock it. I couldn't lock it.
maybe Ramona can lock it for us because
Or
she knows like all our episodes intimately, right?
the curator. She the curator?
She's the president of our fan club. She knows it all.
Yeah, we should remind her of that. She's not doing a very good job.
Oh,
We might have to
shoot. I
we'll
can't
have to
believe you
s
just said that, bro.
well, I think we have to send out the instruction manual again. Although I will say we haven't been given her much to work with the last few weeks, right? We really haven't. We
And I
kind of
haven't heard from Carlos. I saw Carlos one day. I was at his school, and interesting situation actually. It was amusing in a way because so picture a long straight hallway,
okay,
and
I'm
I'm
there.
I'm at one end, and Carlos is halfway up the hallway, and
Right.
he's outside of his classroom. He's outside of the room and across the hall from his room, where
Mhm.
there's a water dispenser.
Are we taught Mr. Roque?
Mr. Roque. How many Carloses do we know?
I don't know. Isn't there also
Oh,
Fusco?
Carlo Fusco. Yeah, but we've
Yeah.
never really talked about him here, have we?
True, true. No, but I just
Oh, fair enough.
it
Fair enough.
it came to mind. That's all. Just came to mind.
So word up to Carlo Fusco, who's a great
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, high school teacher in the Waterloo Region District School Board. Good guy.
In
Um,
the loo. In the loo.
in the Lou, yeah. So Carlos, Mr. Roque, is outside of his classroom and he's looking at the wall and he's talking. So then I start walking down the hall thinking that there's a student in like a little I'm like there can't be a student in that space, but Carlos is talking to somebody. So as I get closer, I realize Carlos is doing like either he's on the telephone or it's a FaceTime type thing with a parent is what it appeared to be. And I guess
Mhm.
he put the phone down on top of the water dispenser and he was talking to it. So I realize halfway up to him that he's not with a student. He's communicating with someone.
Mhm.
Um, so then right beside him is the library door. So I just poke my head into the window and I
Mhm.
try to avoid him. And he looks at me, goes, "Hey, Mr. Chidiak." I'm like, "Oh, hey, Mr. Roque." And I start walking away quickly because I don't want him to think that I want to talk to him while he's talking to somebody else. That's
Yeah.
the last time I saw Mr. Roque. He's not reached out to me. He's not said anything about the podcast. So maybe he's given up on us because of the last 2 weeks. I don't know.
No, I can counter.
You
I
can
can
counter.
counter. I can counter. Carlos, well, I don't know. I don't know if he's given up on us, but I will say, I recently had a really, um, I had a connected moment with him via Twitter DM. We were
Oh,
having a
nice.
Yeah, so we were having a convo just about the piece that I put out, the spoken word piece.
Bloom.
So he had some thoughts. He had some thoughts, and I
Oh,
appreciate it, and I appreciate him. Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. Um, but uh, but Mr. Roque, I still got you, man. I still got you. So thank you for reaching out and having that conversation. Um, I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it.
well, it's nice that he's having conversations with you. I haven't heard from him, but I want I want to move into Bloom for a second. Your spoken
Okay.
word. I called it a poem. Is it a poem?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So
That's
the
fair.
poem that you read out loud, is that what
Yep.
spoken word is?
It is.
Okay, fair enough. Um, okay, so I thought of a couple of cool things, dude.
Do
First
it.
of all, um, so I listened to it twice. The first time I listened to it for just to get like the novelty, the I let it hit me kind of thing, and then
Yes.
the second time I listened
I
to
would
it.
say I think that's wise. I think that's a wise way to come at content. No, like to do it a couple times, right? Like because your first reaction, stitch that with your second reaction, stitch that with your third, and then yeah, I like that. Keep going.
So the first time I just let the performance hit me,
Mhm.
you know, and I enjoyed what you said about your take 73. I really I appreciated that.
You know it. You
I
know it.
get it.
You know you
Um,
get that.
so it hit me, and then I listened to it a second time, and the second time I was reflecting and wondering.
Okay.
And then I asked you some questions about it, like, did you do it in one take? Did you have it written somewhere in front of you? Like all that stuff. But
Yep.
then, dude, last night I watched this YouTube video of a creator
Mhm.
um, who is an artist and does
Mhm.
art with lines, which I know
Okay.
sounds weird because all art has lines in it, but um, she basically, it's interesting. She did this thing where she went somewhere and she gave herself 1 hour to create something.
Okay.
And I thought, whoa, I need to talk to Clough about this and just say to him, have you ever played with the idea of a time restraint to create something and just see what comes of it? Um, I thought a couple of things. I thought, how cool would it be? I know, yeah, I know you do the art, but that's in my mind, the visual art, it doesn't, for some reason, when I think of you and art, I don't think visual art, even though every week
Hmm.
you draw a picture. I think of the
Hmm.
spoken word, I think of poetry.
Okay.
And I just thought it was
That's
cool.
fair. That's fair.
I mixed a couple of things. I mixed this content creator on YouTube, the artist with the lines, and giving herself or restraining her time limit to create something.
Yeah.
And then I connected that with Joe Marquez, who recently started a new podcast called the Vinyl Podcast. So he talks about music that he owns on vinyl that he talks about in his podcast. And I checked it out the other day. And then I was like, what if Chris had his own podcast, spoken word podcast, where he gives
Hmm.
himself 40 or 45 minutes? And in that time, you create a part of a spoken word or an entire spoken word or some type of poem. And you actually, as you're doing it, you're recording yourself talking about it, talking about your thinking, what you're writing, why you're writing it, what it connects to.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was like catching lightning in a bottle. And I was like, well, instead of catching the lightning, why don't you just get the bottle, s- stare at it for 40 minutes, then put the lid on and see what's left in there, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my thought. I had that thought and I wondered, I just lots of wondering. So I thought I'd throw that out at you this morning because I figured we'd be on today. Would you ever consider that? Have you ever considered that? Is that the way do you roll that way sometimes with your poems?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll say, so, um, B Bloom, that one. So Bloom is like, so I can see a habit forming here because last year I did in September. So that piece in September last year, part of that was, part of that, well, okay, so just here's how the flows kind of come together into a whole, let's say. So the in September was a reminder. So I went through those 2 years of micro posts called in September, like just another kind of like a thought, a stunner, a way to sort of account for what could be coming with COVID teaching, stuff that I was already seeing in the, like, as soon as we hit the 2020 line, March 13th, like I started thinking about what we could expect in September. Like how is this going to look when we come back? Because it was one thing to wrap up the year, but I really had the sense of we would be entirely, I wanted to start thinking about what the startup of the year would look like when we came into 2020. So I had all those posts and I did quite a few of them through 2020. I'm still kind of cataloging and kind of writing out the text because a lot of them I was doing on the fly in on the fly in, like, I get an idea in my mind, like what you're talking about, that constraint.
Hmm.
Um, I was doing that in micro moments. So I was quite literally, I would wake up, I would have an idea in my head, and I would work it out with the creative tools of Instagram. Like that's how it was. And I was like, okay, here's the title, in September. In September as text was never intentionally included in the poems. It was an observation, a thought, a rhyme, a photo. Sometimes I was playing with like almost the concreteness of text, like how I positioned it on the page. So it really was, I was trying to just play with the medium of poetry. And if you wanted to, and maybe some people that read the pieces, they did this, you could have started each time with in September and then read the piece there. Or it could just be the reminder of, prognosticating, like foreshadowing. This is something that's coming down the pipe. But you could have taken it like a mantra in September and then blah, 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 whatever my poem was about. But that was a micro example of the constraints that you're talking about. Because I do write fast. I write fast. I get the pieces down. I conceptualize very, very quickly. And I find for me, I have to get into that zone because I know that I can never finish quickly a bigger piece like a spoken word piece. Like it's too big of a space to walk through. And I can't, I even though I'm in the space, I sometimes don't have the words to explain what I'm thinking. So the in September piece is like it's way too long from a competitive spoken word standpoint. Like it's about double the length it should be. But I felt like that was what was necessary for 2 years, a year and change of thinking. Um, but there was constraints there. But that was also a way for me to I wanted to start thinking hopefully about because in September, like some of that shit's dark. It is. Some of it is. And if anybody's come across it in my Insta feed, like it's not like it's I would say more times than not, I had people reaching out to me saying, like, man, like they weren't like, yeah, like this is awesome. Like you lifted me up with it. It wasn't I was kind of like I was working out my issues on the page. So I think I always kind of hit where I wanted to hit. But I do know sometimes when people read it, they felt like I was hitting them. Like I was really just digging into their space, which maybe that's good. Maybe that's not. Who knows? I
Mhm.
think that's also the importance, like what you said, like read it a few times. Like take what you need, take what you need. Know that if you find something in you need, I didn't write it knowing your life. Like I don't know it. Like if you read a piece, one of my pieces, I saw Irma's out there. You read one of my pieces and you thought like this piece is speaking to me. That's between you and the piece. I didn't actually see you when I wrote that piece. Like I didn't. So this is kind of my way from a writer's perspective to say be cautious of what you take personally because I have had some people come back at me and say, how could you say that? Like that was kind of mean. I'm like, well, no, seriously. And this I accept that as someone like I do a lot of my writing, like a lot of my poetry I post up right away. Like I but so back to what you said about the constraints in the process and trying to do it within X amount of time. I have thought about that. I have. As far as doing a spoken word podcast, I played with that, not the podcast part, but I have done in some ways a little bit of freestyle. I did two pieces back in the day. I think there's a reel of it somewhere on Instagram where I was walking one day in downtown Newmarket. And there was something about the beat that I just sort of heard that I noticed in the way I was walking. And it's funny because I've been in conversations with other poets that have talked about the rhythms of their life. Like just and you can talk about a lot of different ways. You can do seasonal of it. You could say, time of day stuff. But I was in a really cool conversation one time talking about the rhythms of them noticing how their walking sounds over the last 2 years and really being mindful of having fewer times where like when they notice that there's more like if you're walking and I can't I'm not a beatboxer, but like if you're walking is like ta, 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 you start to put that into sort of like an 8-bar timing and you have the language that can like you find there's a poetic rhythm in the way that your walking sounds and then you slow it down if it's just like so you knock it right down to like one beat one four beat like that it changes. So I did try messing with that a couple times and that really was an example of me trying to do live like trying to figure out if if this moment right now when I'm noticing this thing right now is the only time that I'm going to accurately capture what's happening right now. I think the only challenge of doing a spoken word pod, if the intention was to create like I am right now with, as we're talking, is that it can be, I would say for my, sometimes I will tell you flat out, there'll be times where I'm writing just to satisfy the time constraint, not actually benefiting from anything in the time constraint. Does that make a difference? It's kind of like it's labor duty, not creativity.
Mm.
So the equivalent of being getting a job to write something, but not really having any feels about it. So I'm tapping into the maybe my talent with words. No, sorry, I'm tapping into the work of my words that I can put a rhyme together. I can sort of create a story, but I'm not tapping into the talent, which is connecting it into something where someone would read it and go, wow, I feel like this piece is speaking to me. Like that part, I sometimes takes time for me to create a piece that reflects what I'm feeling. And then I post it up and I know I'm gonna feel a connection to sort of other peeps that they're gonna read it and they're gonna feel something in it too. Like I am sort of aware when I put up a piece where I'm just like I need to do poetic push-ups. Like I just have this craving, like I got to put some rhymes together. And then other times I'm aware of, wow, I've crafted this, and I think someone's going to connect. I look forward to how someone connects the dots on this piece. I am aware of that moment. Whole lot of blah blah blah. I have thought about it.
Awesome.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. I have thought about it. Who
So
knows?
you
I
saw
won't. I would never say no, because damn, anything could happen, right? We could. I could.
anything could happen, Clough.
Anything could happen. Anything.
um,
I saw you post something from Irma. What did Irma post there? I just saw it real quick.
Irma said, yes, talk about the process and spoken word, the process podcast.
Yeah, nobody likes anyone talking about creative process as much as they like the moment of receiving the gift of someone's creative process. That's one thing that I've kind of learned. Like, I think that someone may enjoy listening to me talking about how I put stuff together, but I'll go, I'm going to, okay, that's a cool moment. And I would appreciate that. But I don't think it compares to the moment when something hits and you don't give a shit about the creative process. What you're doing is just like, man, that hits so hard. Like, and you're just really like where the energy and positivity is in the moment where you can't escape the piece. Like where you can't put it down. You can't get the lines out of your head. You can't stop thinking about your own emotional state. So, and that would be the only thing that's kind of tricky because I've seen lots of spoken word poets put up pieces. And what's funny is not funny, but what's fascinating to me is that I've read their pieces on paper and they've had a harder impact on me than hearing them say the words. So it's fickle. It can be fickle, right? Like you can't, yeah, no guarantees, bro. No guarantees. But I
Well, there's
appreciate
never
Irma asking.
there's never a guarantee. I think when you say that, when you see the spoken word or the performance,
Hmm.
that is made for mass production, mass what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, I would say mass consumption.
Thank you, mass
Is that the word? Was
consumption.
that the word? Yeah, sorry, I put
Yeah,
that in there.
no,
That
no,
was
it's
one.
good. It's
Okay.
meant for mass consumption. Then I think when you talk about the process, that's more of a niche thing, or at least in
Yeah.
my mind. And I guess I'm at a point in my life where I'm constantly looking now for the niche, like, which is funny that I say niche because I'm writing something about a student that I taught whose nickname was Niche. But anyway, um, I'm looking for those, right? Especially like when creating videos or putting images together. Sometimes I'll see a really cool technique or effect that in a mass consumption state, it's pretty amazing. But then I'm
Hmm.
like, I need to drill down and I need to know how that was created and why it was created that way.
Yeah.
But that's just me with certain things, you know. Um,
I like that you said that. I really like that you said that because I am now I don't like rules. Just as a matter of fact, like sorry, wrong way to come at this. my brain naturally pushes against rules. Like I want to go my own way. I want to figure it out. I'm the starting to play Monopoly before the instructions are read. Like I'm prepared to make the mistakes that someone could afterwards say about them. Like, you know, it says right here in like the instructions here that you're not supposed to do it that way. And I made the mistake of it. Maybe I've started to complain about it. They're like, well, it's right here in the instructions. You could have just read it there and saved yourself the anxiety. I need that anxious moment of feeling the mistake that I just made in order to learn what the rule is or what the creative direction is. And this is kind of specific. I use this in teaching. I use it in my sort of creative pursuits. But I am now starting to. I've been reading a lot of Mary Oliver poetry. And Mary Oliver um, also has quite a bit of writing on there about the I'll call it, it's like the science of poetry, like the actual science and structure of poetry. And at some point, like you can colloquial and euphemize whatever it is you've discovered in teaching or discovered about parenting or discovered about the creative process, but somebody's probably already put a flag in it and named it. So you get your own personalized jargon for it, but someone has done the work of the analytical part and kind of explaining why does this work. Like they've already connected the dots. um but I take the long road to coming back to those specialists because I feel like, like if I was in the time of whatever Isaac Newton back in the day, and if there's any truth to the apple hitting him in the head, and he's like, oh, this must be a scientific principle. I would need that apple. I would need my own apple to hit me in the head several times. I don't know if I would have taken their word for it. I would have needed something to have fallen on me and for me to say, oh, there's something making that thing always fall in one direction, right? And I find that my creative is like that. I'm very slow to take other people's word for it. I feel like it's almost my responsibility to suffer a little bit like other individuals who have discovered something. They take time to sort of notice, they take time to sort of grow it, they take time to figure out the tools that they need by what they see as a deficit in their work. So I'm now in my poetry coming to a space, or even in my writing in general, where I am going back to instruction manuals and I'm seeking individuals that can kind of explain or offer me their wisdom about how to restrain certain things so that other elements can come out too. Um, so I like that you're talking about those tools, because those creative tools, I think, are part of those instruction manuals that at some point, and the phone, this is a great example of way too many tools for the average human, right? Like what you can do with this is downright magical, considering they don't even offer the iPhones have never offered instruction manuals. They tell you how to turn it on, they say go, then everything else is like community. Go to a forum, ask somebody else. So I like that you're mentioning the tools, because I think that is something that's incredibly special and incredibly important to mention. Last thing I'll just drop on that is, like, there's some really clear connections there between how students learn and how teachers learn.
I don't want to open a can of worms here, but I do have
Worm
to
me,
go.
worm me.
I do have to go in a couple of minutes,
Do it.
but I want to make a connection to what you said, because just yesterday I had this great conversation with a colleague
Hmm.
who travels around the school board like I do.
Hmm.
And I mean, you know the backstory here, and I don't want to go that deep, but I do just want to say that I recognize this person's like knowledge and wisdom, not only in the work that he does, but in the way he navigates the human relationships while doing the work. And yesterday I had a moment of, like, tell me how you do this, because to everybody else it looks like magic, right? You and I've talked about uh, edu magic, and how people just want things to just happen, and Roland can do that. Hey, I've even heard about Irma, and she's, thanks for checking us out today, Irma, after our long hiatus. This is our 209th episode, Irma. We're celebrating
Hmm.
quietly. Anyway, it's magic. It's talk to this person and it'll happen. And it's
Hmm.
like, no, it's not magic. So I was saying to this person, educate me. Tell me, how do you do this? You have experience doing this all the time. How do you do it? And literally then, as he started to talk, I sat myself down and I was completely open to what he was saying and trying to gather the goodness and make connections to my world. And whether I think I could, what he just said there, could I do that? Or not could I do that? Would I want to? And oh, I'm really good at that, but I'm not so good at that. And just those inner workings is so important when you are open to receiving them. And then another connection that I met with a student, one of my students yesterday, who is in that space right now with me. He's open to hearing what I have to say. And yeah, what we got 3 weeks left of school, and this kid, it's a long story, and he's been through a lot, but I enjoy spending my time with him because he's valuable. They all are, but he
Mhm.
is. There's something about this kid that stands out, and it's like you've said, it's the 100th person that this kid needed to be connected with for something to start to happen. And I feel like
99 have made it through and mentioned something similar, and it's that kind of strange thing. It doesn't have to be the 100, but
you know what I mean. It's
absolutely.
the nth person. Can
Yeah.
we say that the nth person
Mhm, mhm,
steps in, and all of a sudden something seems to be working, and it's not like the 88 before or the 72 before didn't care or didn't demonstrate that to them. It's just it wasn't, things in life were not allowing an openness to happen for that person. But anyway,
mhm.
I just, all these things are so connected for me in terms of I'm in the niche space. I want to see, I don't want the magic anymore.
Mhm.
I want the recipe. And even if it's your special recipe, I still just want to hear about the inner workings, because it's the inner workings that people rarely pay attention to, and the journey. Because anybody who's good at anything has journeyed to a point where to other people it looks automatic and it looks like magic, but really it's not. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of time that's been put into all kinds of different things to make things look really easy, to make things look magical to other people.
And I gotta add to that because I think that, and anybody who comes across this pod, and I think I would say this to my colleagues as well, is it's a challenge. It's that if you have somebody in your um somebody that is your go-to person, somebody that you've ever thought to yourself or said to somebody else, connect them with that person. Like if you've ever done that, and I think so many educators have done this, like you do this kind of like blind drop or like curbside drop off of a kid in somebody else's portfolio. Just before you do that, or soon after you do that, because I do want, the kids to get helped, but take the time, as you just said, take the time to connect with that adult, connect with that teacher, talk to them about the labor and the work and the connections and the recipe for it. It will help all of us really understand how each of us are positioned within our school boards to help each other. And I'm not like you and I, yeah, we've talked about the magic, but the problem with magic, if you're there as an audience member, is that you will suspend your disbelief and you'll choose not to ask how the trick is done. I think it benefits the kids so much more if we do, when that close up magic happens, that we actually ask, how did you do that trick? Because I just need to be able to replicate and help other kids. Like that's really what it comes down to. I don't want to be you, but I need to know who in the board is behind this trick. What resources did you get access to 5 years ago that allowed this moment to happen? Because I have noticed that there are kids can be moved through the system. Heck, even colleagues, ideas can be moved through the system where we say, just get it to that person and they'll make it happen. No, they're not. They're not just making it happen. There's definitely a recipe that would make that thing happen. And I think the more we sort of let magic and science and pedagogy coexist, we'll just have a better fluency of the labor it takes to help a kid through the system.
Just say no to EDU magic.
Just say no to EDU magic.
That looks to me like a tree.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's hard sometimes when
Hmm.
you put it up to the camera. It's a
I know.
tree.
This ain't a studio. This is my broke down corner of the basement with bits, all the art and stuff. The journey is what makes a difference. It is weaving of people who care. It comes down to passion, grace, and kindness. Irma had me. She has me all the way through. That's a quote from her. But I will also say that also quite specifically, I I'm always cautious about letting that be the only message. Right? I want to make sure that it's also about tactic. It's about strategy. It's about plotting. It's about the rules in the school board. It's about the Education Act. It's about the AQs that people have taken. It's about the budgeting. I like everything that Irma said, but I want to make the menu longer. It's about more than that. And yeah, I think it's about more than that. I want it to be about more than that. And that. I don't know.
I
Cheers.
like what you're saying, Clough, in terms of the strategy and maybe a plan, a structure. I like that you added AQ courses. Thanks for acknowledging that people have, and not only AQ courses, but also other maybe like micro credentials that people have taken to help them
Hmm.
along the way with whatever it
Yep.
is they feel that they think they need. Thinking about the box differently and strategically. I
Hmm.
would agree that there's strategy there for sure.
One of the coolest things, the last thing I'll just, well, it's not the last thing. The last thing for now is some of the coolest restaurants, but the most precarious restaurants that I've ever been in are restaurants that have menus that are entirely based on the season.
Mm.
They are based on what is available to them locally. And the trick is getting people to exist in that space with you and to feel the it's not collaboration, but that they feel the the energy that can come around with potential failure and success at the same time. So I think even sort of talking about, the things as in the box, I'm pushing back hard on Irma, but even the word box, like that's a bureaucratic term, right? It's very much a pure bureaucratic term. I would say it's bureaucratic. It can be connected with colonialism. It can be connected with how we sort of assess and evaluate and judge when we talk about inside or outside the box. And all I'll do is the comparison is like restaurants, like the danger in EDU can be thrilling too. And if we're sort of looking at it in a more seasonal, local vor kind of fashion, what that means is we just understand that the resources we have in front of us could be temporary, but they could be really powerful too if we're operating within seasons. Like this is the good stuff that we have access to right now. Let's maximize our harvest. You're holding a stick.
It's a wand, and I'm waiting to use it to exit.
Let's exit.
You're holding a
Exit,
stick.
yeah, Exitio Podcasto. There we go. End the podcast.